Greetings, everyone. Dr. Brian Scott with you here as we continue our insight to the end times study of the end times. The end times. This is a time period just before the 7 years of tribulation begin, followed and concluded with the Battle of Armageddon. We're so close to that, it could occur at just about any time now, and yet it could be years away. We just don't know for sure. The scriptures tell us in a number of locations, Matthew 24 makes a reference to it, Acts chapter 1 makes a reference to it, that these are not things that we are allowed to know. But at the same time, there are signs that indicate to us we're getting closer and closer. Jesus talked about a lot of end time events in Matthew 24 and several other chapters in Mark and Luke. But what he was saying pertained mostly to current events or physical events, natural events like earthquakes and fires and wars and nation against nation and so on. The Apostle Paul wrote about the end times as well in in a lot of locations in the letters he wrote. In the first chapter, or the first book of Timothy, chapter 4, verse 1, he makes reference to in these latter times, you're going to see some, and he's referring to believers. They're going to depart from the faith. They're going to pay attention to or give heed to seducing spirits or deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons or demonic doctrines. We're seeing that occur all through our spiritual system where people are bailing out on the church, bailing out on living morally and with integrity and adopting things that are of a lesser level, as if it's normal. Then Paul continued when he wrote the second letter to Timothy in chapter 3 and verse 1 through verse 7 or 8, he says, perilous times will come in these last days. And these perilous times, he's describing them in these subsequent verses. We're in verse number 4. We're actually moving into verse number 4 today. We've been in verses 2 and 3, where he listed something like 14 different elements of peril that will be signs of the end. We've been examining them individually just to make sure we are aware of these things because they're occurring all around us. And, things can occur to such an extent that they become normal and you don't pay any attention to them. And that's what we're seeing happen more and more, is that there's this, people are being anesthetized. They're being put to sleep. They are paying no attention to the things that are going on. And this is very concerning.
Hey, this is Matt from Insights to the End Times. I wanted to interrupt just for a quick moment and ask you to do us a huge favor. If you could go ahead and hit the like, share, or subscribe button, it would allow us to make sure that you stay up to date with all the latest videos from Dr. Scott. Now back to the episode.
I'm sure you have a smartphone or whatever you might call it. And these smartphones are mini computers. In fact, they're more than mini computers. They have more computing power than the computers that put the men on the moon. When Neil Armstrong and the others were lifted into space and went to the moon and landed on the moon and so on, the computers that did that don't even hold a shred of power compared to our cell phones today or our smartphones today. And because of our smartphones, we're subject to the opinion of so many people who love posting. And they're not pre-qualified. They don't have to pass any test as to their knowledge level or their veracity, their truth level. They can just post whatever they want to post. And they can do it by way of wording or by pictures or by verbal. And folks, I'm telling you, it's not necessarily the best source of anything. Now, there's a lot of really good stuff on the phones today, that you can access. But there's an awful lot of filth there too. But there's also a lot of opinions. And most of those opinions you don't want to pay attention to. But that's where these demonic doctrines come in. They just grab a hold of you it's like a hook getting into you, and they just start pulling you back in, and then they got a hold of you. It's something else. Anyways, I want to get into verse number 4 today. The very first thing listed there are traitors, people who are disloyal, people who are betrayers. You've probably been subjected to some of these people over the years. Maybe you've also been one of these people. Hopefully not, but a traitor is someone who betrays you, turns against you. They may promise you something and then they break the promise. They may have given you an oath and they break the oath. They're disloyal type people. Their disloyalty is forgotten today in today's society because it's a norm. I have so many illustrations and examples of this that we have encountered over the years. I practiced law for 17 years when I began my professional career. Did a lot of work for a lot of very good people. Had long-standing relationships with many of them. Counted them as friends, and was available to them at the drop of a hat. And then I would find that they would betray me and go elsewhere because someone else said, we can do that same job for you and save you $25. They were going to pay somewhere in the vicinity of $600 for the work, maybe as much as $1,000 for the work, because that's what it was worth. And they were willing to lead that long-term relationship and friendship to save $25. Does that make any sense? No, but that's disloyalty. That's betrayal. That's a traitor. What about all those people who get married and say, till death do us part, and then a couple years later, it's irreconcilable differences. We can't make it work. And they walk away from the marriage, and then there's children involved, and they're being thrown back and forth like a ping pong ball on a game of table tennis. Why? Spirit of traitor, a spirit of betrayal, a spirit of disloyalty. It's everywhere. It's so common today. So you may have had some really dear friends over the years. You may not have them any longer. Very few people have long-term friendships anymore because of this demonic spirit that's in the land. It runs with, it just, nobody contains it. It becomes so prevalent in these last days. You go back to verse number 2, it says the very first component of these perilous times are people become lovers of themselves. So they would focus everything on themselves, not on anyone else. And so why do you have families splitting into segments? And they become disjointed, and they end up moving here and there and away, and it is unbelievable. I have a number of first cousins, and over the many years, we have all been very close. And at least there's several families of us who have been very close. And we make it a point to get together and celebrate certain events over the course of a year, especially around, say, Christmas and once or in the summer. And we invite this extended family to come together, and many times we all get together. And one of my cousins recently said to me, in their workplace, the overseer of that workplace, the individual who was over top of them, said, I don't get it. What's this deal with you and your cousins? Why is that so important that you get together with your cousins? Like, nobody does that. And the response from my cousin was, we're a close-knit family, even extended family. We've always been. And the overseer said, that's weird. That's really weird. You see, we've got this spirit of betrayal or disloyalty or traitor in the land. Certainly is very common in business circles. You'll have people go together to start something up, to work together, to be partners or to be co-owners, and then before you know it, you've got a lawsuit going on as they decide to go in different directions and split up. Social media hasn't been our friend, not in these areas. Social media comes along and people will post something that is absolutely false and borders on being fraudulent, but the damage is done. I like to put it this way. You can squeeze toothpaste out of the tube, but you can't put it back in. So after the word gets out, after the statement gets out, the damage is done. So you see this spirit of betrayal, this spirit. Look at Judas Iscariot. For 30 pieces of silver, he sold out the Lord Jesus Christ to the authorities. And then after they had arrested Jesus and taken him into custody, Judas Iscariot was upset and wished he hadn't done it. And he went to the people who paid him the funds and repented to them. He hadn't harmed them, he harmed Jesus. And so even in situations where there is a betrayal that occurs or a traitor has occurred, if they do come to a place of wanting to make things right, they usually go to the wrong person. They go to the person they sinned with or committed the fraud with, as opposed to the person they hurt and hindered. Everything's upside down. So this 15th trait or component of perilous times being a traitor is insidious. It is breaking things down, unity, the closeness of the family, and so on. It just keeps splintering. We've certainly seen it in the church setting. We're in our 40th year of ministry, and we've had a lot of people come through the doors over those years, and many of them have come and settled in and said, "Boy, this is exactly what I've been looking for many, many years. I am so excited to be here, and I'll be with you to the very end." Well, their definition of the very end came a lot sooner than ours. They bailed out pretty quickly. Why'd they do it? Because of that spirit of disloyalty, that spirit of betrayal. And not that they're bad people, it's that they just don't realize they've submitted themselves to this. And because they've submitted themselves to this in other areas, this takes over and it just causes them all kinds of grief. It is absolutely amazing how deep this goes. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a true friend? Like, I mean, a really true friend? A long-standing friendship, one that you can count on, one that you would say very clearly, they are a true friend. They're with me through thick and thin. They've never betrayed me. They've never left me. I've never left them. We are true friends all the way. Well, that used to be the case. But today, statistics show that very, very, very few people have a true friendship. And when I say that true friendship, I'm talking about very few people have 5 friends of more than 5 years. They're all short-term relationships. Now, I think in terms of my parents, as a for instance, my mother comes to mind. My mother went to a girls' school for her last years of high school education. It was a private girls' school. It was a pretty distinct school, well-known, great reputation, and entrance requirements were tough to get in. And all the girls in the school, it was a girls-only school. They all wore uniforms every day and so on. And this was many years ago, obviously. My mother maintained those friendships with at least 4 of those girls as they became women, as they became wives, as they became mothers, as they became grandmothers. And in a couple of cases, Being the oldest in our family, I may remember this more than my siblings, but I looked at these ladies as what we called aunts because they were so close to my mother and vice versa. And their friendship was an intertwined thing. And to this day, we still talk about the great friend and the great impact that those friendships had. Now, on the other hand, my relationship with those I went to university with and went to business school with and went to law school with is very, very removed. It's not like this. It's way out here. Might communicate with them once every couple of years. It's not a deep friendship. Never developed because things were changing in society and things were expanding so greatly. So I think of this story in the scriptures of the paralyzed man, or the man who was carried around on a cot, on a stretcher by 4 friends, and they wanted to get him into the presence of Jesus. You probably know this story. And they couldn't get in because the house was packed with people. So they got this bright idea: let's climb up on the roof of this building, and let's tear off part of the roof, and we will lower him down because we got ropes on each of the 4 corners of this stretcher. We'll lower him down into the presence of Jesus, where Jesus healed him. It was a powerful story, but it leads me to this thought: do you have 4 friends that you would trust to hold the corners of your stretcher, or to lower you down into the presence of the healer? Do you have 4 friends that you would trust? Do you know a lot of people don't? And it's because, not because they're bad people, but this spirit of betrayal, this spirit of disloyalty that I'm talking of, this spirit of betrayal and traitors, it permeates the land to such an extent it has the impact of separating us, and we don't even realize that this is a perilous issue. No, we don't. And so as a result, people who are friendly to you are likely going to be the ones who stab you in the back. I'll give you one last illustration. We have had a lot of ministry to a lot of church people, and we've walked through some horrible situations with many of them over the years. Family splits and divorces and accusations of this and that and something else, and we have basically been the glue that has held them together. And we have had a commitment to these folks in the church over the many years, good relationship, thought we could count on them. And then all of a sudden, someone else's influence enters in and they separate from us and they walk away from us and they have nothing to do with us after we were the ones who saved their lives. And it's devastating. I remember one of these couples, we walked through, pardon the expression, we walked through hell with them to keep their head above water and keep them from drowning in the situation they went through. And they walked away from us, left the church and left communicating and everything else. And I was in the store one day and I was walking towards the back of the store. I was looking for a particular product. And as I got to the second last aisle and turned down the aisle, guess who's in the aisle but that individual, that fella, that man. And when he saw me, I immediately said hello to him and said, "Hey, how are you? How you doing?" He ran right by me, left his cart in the aisle with everything in it, ran right by me and ran right out of the store And that was the last I've seen of them. That was years ago. How does someone go from, you saved my life, I owe my whole life to you, thank you, you saved my family, you saved my kids, to they leave you, walk away from you, and then when you see them and you greet them and they race away from you, that is more than normal. That's what we call perilous times. That's what we call the spirit of a betrayal, the spirit of disloyalty, the spirit of a traitor. And all of us are surrounded by them. Please don't become one. These are perilous times, and these are signs of the peril. You might think, oh, that's just human nature. No, it's more than that. This is demonic times we're living in. Well, I hope I helped you today. We're coming back later this week with our last podcast of this week, and it's going to be a blessing to you. So I'll see you then. Call you blessed. Amen.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Insights to the End Times. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to get notified every time we release a new video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right over here. Now, if you'd like to catch the previous episode, you can do that right here, or the entire playlist is right above, right here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Insights to the End Times.